FAZE Sensei versus King Kenny, the breakdown.
And guys, I know you've been waiting on this one. We are starting our breakdown series for DAZN and Misfits Boxing X Series number 1, August 27th from the O2 Arena.
Need to get a drink. I need to get a drink. FAZE Sensei is an OG in the YouTube boxing scene. Yeah, I didn't even watch his fight though, like when he did it. But he's only had the one. But I think I was seeing all these polls going around saying that like who's gonna win the FAZE Sensei versus King Kenny, and everyone was saying Sensei will win. I'm pretty sure he's much bigger as well, isn't he? Like height and weight, pretty sure. Probably. Seems like it is. He is.
Arena. Now, we're not going to get to every single fight, and I can't do predictions because I am commentating on the event, and I want to remain as unbiased as possible with that, but we're going to break down 4 fights, and I'm going to give you guys ways that both combatants can win each fight and what they need to do to get the job done. Today, we are starting with none other than my boy, the fellow breakdown co-host, FAZE Sensei, by Big Oos, and the man that is looking for revenge versus the FAZE clan, King Kenny. But before we get into it, guys, the W.A.D.E Concept Watch Party is back this Saturday, 12 p.m. PST for Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua.
That's a fight I'm watching. I'm going to be streaming that as well, but not the actual fight. But, yeah, same sort of thing that W.A.D.E's going to be doing. When it Tuesday,
12 p.m. PST.
12 p.m. PST. I don't even know what that is in Australia time.
PST for Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. The rematch is upon us, and you already know I'm throwing some money down on this fight. I'm ready to be hurt once again because I am taking Alexander Usyk by decision. Speaking of putting my money down, that stream and this.
Nah. I reckon AJ's going to win the rematch. Actually, yeah. I really do. I think because he does pretty well, like when it is regarding rematches, he's done pretty well.
This video is brought to you by the best sports book in all the land, MyBookie. That is right, guys. MyBookie.ag. It's the spot to be if you are betting on Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua this weekend. UFC 278, Kamaru Usman. Do have football season right all year, and again, you can do the same when you use dollars and deposit up a couple of months and all. Now, how does FAZE Sensei beat King Kenny? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And what ultimately can happen on fight night? Well, this is episode 1 of the DAZN / Misfits Boxing Breakdown. Let's go. All right, so let's start with what I think are the big points of this fight. One, it's a 4-round, 3-minute per round fight, which I think benefits both guys, to be honest. One, Sensei coming off a 3-year layoff, so a shorter fight will benefit his ability to stay fresh during the entirety of that fight. On Kenny's side, 4 rounds I think is also beneficial because, yes, he's fought more recently, but it isn't like Kenny has a ton of experience under his belt to be able to go longer rounds just yet. So 4 is perfect, and I think will allow him to utilize his skill set and, again, stay fresh so that we do get a great fight between both guys. So let's talk about both fighters and their strengths and weaknesses, and we'll start with Kenny. I think Kenny, in the amount of time he's been boxing, has really evolved his game very quickly. To a degree, in my opinion, that a lot of YouTubers haven't. The skills that he's developed from the first little bits that we saw in the little goofy spar between him and Chunks and some other guys of the Beta Squad until this point, there's been a rapid improvement in his game, and that has to come down to not only Daily Peralez obviously coaching him, but the dedication he has put into his grind. He has leveled up. He's got a great jab. He works it upstairs into the body. Watching the temper back when he entered range, he did take that lead foot, plant it on the outside of the southpaw, and try to circle as he jabbed his way in, right? Trying to get off that center line and take different angles of attack. Try to mix up that jab and give some variety to what he was doing. He remained composed in that fight versus Temper. Even when things weren't going his way, he was still able to come back and try to put shots on Temper. Kenny also showed some flashes in that Temper fight of stepping on the gas pedal and really forcing Temper to fight him back, and I thought that was when he had his most success. And if I'm looking at this objectively, that would be the place to give Sensei some trouble, right? To be able to put him on the back foot and do so with technique, not just running into range. Now, that's very easily said and really hard to actually do because Sensei is a very technical striker, but if Kenny is able to do that and pressure him, not necessarily like he did with Tommy, but the same effect that he gave Tommy inside the range, throwing shots, making things uncomfortable, and turning this.
I did see that Sensei, like a while back, said when it first got announced that he was coming back, he said that he was only coming back the one time, and that he wanted to like really go out there and just like, you know, really go to war. So I guess we'll see how that plays out.
Into a bit of a back and forth, I do think that is where the success will lie. Trying to stand at range and box back and forth with Sensei, I don't know if that will be the most effective because Sensei does have a solid foundation. He's technically sound and he can play that game just as well as anyone. On the other hand, what are Kenny's weaknesses in this fight particularly? I think, one, the experience factor will get to Kenny a bit because Sensei will show him things that outside of maybe sparring in the gym, he hasn't seen in a live fight situation. And that doesn't mean that he's not sparring pro guys in his gym. That doesn't mean that he's not getting even better technical guys to come and box him. I absolutely think that Kenny's had some real high-level guys come in, and he's probably had some success with those guys, but the way in which Sensei sets up shots isn't fundamentally based as a boxer. The way that Sensei cuts angles and the things he does to play with your timing and your hand positioning and offense to defense transition, those things come from a lot of different martial arts, and you'll see that in the variation that he can bring to the fight, the adjustments he can make mid-fight based on that experience that I don't know if Kenny has. Another thing I would say Kenny has to avoid in this fight is the you go, I go mentality, right? I throw my punches, then you throw yours, and I block, and then I throw, and then you throw. That's something that plagued him a bit in the Temper fight because as soon as Kenny entered range, Temper wanted to counter over the top, right? He planted his foot in the ground and threw combinations where Kenny threw 1, Temper threw 4, where Kenny threw 2, Temper threw 3. It was always being outgunned in those exchanges that got him in trouble. Variation in the attack, on balance, but also in ways that don't just invite the you go, I go mentality is something Kenny's going to have to change. Also, something I think Kenny's going to have to embrace here that he didn't necessarily do in the Temper fight is a bit of a counterpuncher mentality because this is the first time I've heard Sensei talk about going in and wanting a war. I mean, the man said he wanted to go in and
So, told you. I do think that, what's it called? I do think that, what's his name? FAZE Sensei probably could actually get a knockout.
lead.
I kind of have this I just want to go for it.
Yeah.
You know, I want to let the hands go.
This is the clip that I saw.
Out there. From this fight, I want us to both bleed.
I think obviously that points to a more aggressive sensei on the front foot, and that's again where I go back to the Tommy fight. Something he struggled with was once Tommy put combinations together, answering in the middle of those combinations to gain that respect, to back him off a bit, was something Kenny wasn't able to do. So how does Kenny win this fight? In my opinion, it's going to come down to staying safe while being aggressive.
Kenny does, in the fight he had with Tempo, he looked like he didn't really have too much power, so that'll be interesting to see how he can cope with someone that looks like that, or is experienced and looks like they have like pretty good power behind their punches. So we'll see. They're not wearing headgear, I don't think, as well. So
having a variety of different angles and attacks, and after a 3-year layoff, being able to make Sensei's return uncomfortable, not letting him get into a rhythm, because once the rust comes off, he's one of the better guys in this scene. Now let's talk about my boy Sensei. Listen, I've been saying since I've had a YouTube channel that he is one of the better guys in this scene, and I don't think he gets the same look as guys like KSI, Logan Paul, Jake Paul do skill for skill wise, but in my opinion, he's been right there with them. Again, the biggest plague that Sensei has had is that he hasn't been as active, not only in the ring, but just in the scene as those other guys have. The "what have you done for me lately" effect, right? We haven't seen you, therefore we don't know where you're at. So let's talk about some weaknesses from Sensei. And yes, that people are going to point to the ring rust. And while I do say yes, the 3 years off is a flaw, is something that you could take advantage of if Kenny has those tools and has developed that experience in the sparring room to take advantage of them. But being off for 3 years for Sensei is not the same as someone like KSI being off for 3 years, because of the back end work that Sensei had put in for years and years and years in the totality of combat sports to give himself a wealth of knowledge and experience to still be able to perform and know in his mind who and what he is as a fighter. So yes, if there is a time to catch Sensei where he has a moment of
just gonna take my dinner out. Who's back? Shady's back. Back again.
rust, or he's not quite fully to the level he needs to be because of the lack of fights he's had in the last 3 years, it would be now. This is the time for Kenny to absolutely pounce. It's just going to come down to if Kenny has the experience, knowledge, and ability to take advantage of the hole Sensei will present, especially early in that fight, before he starts to settle in and the rust starts to fall off a bit. And like I said, we'll talk about Sensei being pressured. A lot of people take a look at, again, the Gibbs spar, the KSI spar, Sensei on the back foot. They did a really good job of almost drowning him with just forward pressure. But again, Sensei is a composed striker. I would say more so than Temper even was in their fight, and he will look for those openings even when Kenny is attacking. And I would consider that a strength of Sensei's, and let's talk about a couple more strengths of his. I do think Sensei will, out of the two of these guys, be the more technical striker. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful to Kenny or Daly or anybody like that. I just think Kenny, being as new as he is, there's still going to be a feeling out process for when he's comfortable throwing what shot. Sensei has all those shots. He has all the tricks. He knows when to throw, when not to, how to set up, how to break timing. Those things he's known for years now. So again, that experience factor and just being able to have all the tools are all things I give as strengths to Sensei that Kenny, I don't know, has just yet. And not only does Sensei have that variety and timing, he also has power. He can absolutely crack. He damn near broke Overt Flow's fucking orbital bone. And again, those liver shots did put down a man far bigger than Kenny is. So we do know, even in, I think those were 16 or 14s they were wearing, with headgear, Sensei can get you out of there. He's shown an ability to stop the fight, and that makes him more dangerous than anyone Kenny's ever seen, again, in the actual ring for an actual fight. I'm not saying that Sensei is better than any of Kenny's sparring partners, because I don't believe that. I think the pros in Daly's gym are pros for a reason. They're fucking great, and Kenny sparring those guys to get ready for Sensei is absolutely the right move. So how does Sensei get this fight done? I think he takes advantage of some of the same things that Temper did, and that is the inexperience of Kenny in the fire, right? The you go, I go mentality. I think that could be the key point of this fight if Kenny has gotten to the point where he's more comfortable throwing in a back and forth setting where he doesn't get stung with the shot and immediately go to the high guard, back off, and try to reset. He can find a way to move either through those shots, around those shots, slipping, and then countering off with something to, again, get Sensei's attention. We have a different story, but if not, and Sensei's able to start getting in his rhythm and hitting Kenny with shots that back him off or hurt him, he's only going to continue doing that, and once the train starts rolling, it's going to be hard to stop. And if we do see a more aggressive Kenny, like I think he probably should be in this fight, right? More front foot, more on the jab, you can't be predictable, because if that happens, Sensei off his back foot is a great counterpuncher as well. Things that Kenny is going to have to watch out for is falling too hard into range. Could see if Kenny is a little careless and reckless coming forward, Sensei catching him with good shots, possibly being able to hurt him and put him away there. So those are the variety of ways I think Sensei could win a decision. I think Kenny can win a decision, and I think it's less likely between both, but we could see one or the other get knocked out. I think Kenny would have to be far more aggressive than he was in the Temper fight. And again, Daly says that Kenny has absolute bombs in his hands, so if he lands one of those...
I don't know. I feel like Kenny doesn't have much power, but like his movement was pretty good in when he was up against Temper, and that's probably that's like improved. Probably should have, but I feel like if once he gets hit with a few like big power shots from Sensei, yeah, I feel like he's gonna like back off a bit, and then FAZE Sensei will start to really control the rest of the rounds. That's if it goes a distance. But, yeah. That's more prediction for that.
That's a fight changer, and we've seen Sensei be able to take guys out systematically or blitzing forward, catching guys on that front foot like we've seen in some of his past fights in the MMA scene. So that's what I have, man. There's the first breakdown. Kenny versus Sensei. I'm not picking a winner because that's not my job here. I'll leave that to you guys. Who do you think wins this fight and how? What happens on fight night? I gave you the variables, but only two people have those answers, and that's FAZE Sensei and King Kenny. So I guess we'll find out.
No. Yep, I have FAZE Sensei winning that. KSI winning his